So we're going to talk about graphing square root functions, and you have done this before. You probably are sick of this. I'm kind of sick of it. But if you were going to graph the basic square root function, square root of x, like always, when you're looking to figure out what a graph looks like, you'd plug in some numbers. And you would know right away, we can't take the square root of a negative number. So you're not going to plug in negatives. And what you're really thinking is our domain is 0 to infinity, right? So we're going to plug in 0, we can plug in 1, 2, I'm not going to bother, 3, I'm not going to bother, but 4 I can plug in, 9 I can plug in, and we get nice numbers, right? Square root of 0 is 0, 1, 2, 3. So you're going to have something that if you had graph paper would look kind of like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. It doesn't go up very quickly, right? It increases. So we have 1, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 9, 3. It increases, but it increases really slowly. Right, so we have a graph that looks like that. And then it's kind of like half a sideways parabola, which in fact it is. Because if we wrote that as y is equal to square root of x, you know we could square both sides and you'd get a quadratic, but it's the y that's squared, right? So this is the graph of square root of x. And then we've talked a lot about shifting this, right? If I had y is equal to the square root of x minus 3, well, that minus 3 is going on kind of in the heart of this function, which means that we're going to shift this whole thing 3 units to the right. Same shape, except instead of starting at 0, 0, it's going to start over here at 3, 0. And that doubly makes sense because if you were going to figure out what you could plug into this function, you couldn't plug in a 0 because that would give you a negative inside. You couldn't plug in 1. The smallest thing you could plug in is 3. And then if you do that, you're really taking the square root of, well, 3 minus 3 is 0, so that's going to give you a 0. If you plug in a 4, that would give you a 1. So you can see that it's kind of the exact same shape. The same thing is going on, but it's shifted to the right. And your domain is x is greater than or equal to 3, or maybe we'd write it in interval notation. As opposed to if you had y is equal to the square root of x plus 3, right? We've talked about this a lot. This shifts it 3 units to the left. So whatever goes on in the heart and soul of the function kind of does exactly the opposite of what you would think, right? So this shifts this. So your domain starts at negative 3 and goes to infinity. Then, like always, there's that situation where you're adding or subtracting, but not into the guts of the fraction. If you had something like f of x equals square root of x, and I'm going to leave a little space, plus 3, again, you can always do a little t-chart here. And when I think about what I can plug into that, I could plug in a 0, a 1, a 4, and that would give me a 3, a 4, a 5. So it looks exactly like what we had before, except now this is shifted up 3. So you're going to practice just with shifting a little bit, and then we're going to talk about something else.